Hi, this is Christina from Proverbs 31 Woman, and today I'd like to show you how to dehydrate celery and also to make celery salt. This is some celery that I picked from our garden. It was planted simply by taking a store-bought celery plant, cutting off all of the stalks up, but leaving a few inches and putting it in the soil, and then it just sprouts new stalks. And that's part of what I love about growing celery is it's cut and come again. So once I have that plant there, it's going to produce multiple harvests for us. Throughout the summer and the fall and the winter, I would just cut off stalks as I needed them. But it's spring and I think it would be good to allow more room for the new growth. So I just cut down all different stalks. Some of them are rather thin and some are very thick. And that's okay. All of them taste good. I do want to mention that, oh look, how lovely, some escargot with my celery. I think I need to wash it before we eat this. Throw it away. Okay, but so I did want to mention that the leaves of celery are edible as well as the stalks. If I'm cooking something, I just go ahead and I chop up those leaves as well as the stalks. They're particularly good in soups or stews, but even if you're cooking up a stir fry or something like that, anywhere where it'll be cooked, we really like the celery leaves. So I'm just going to wash these, get off the slime from the slugs and the snails, and then I'm going to cut them up. So I've washed my celery, gotten off any slimy stuff, and now I'm just going to chop up the stems just like you would if you were cooking it. You don't want it too thin because it'll just kind of waste away into nothing. Give it a little chunk to it. You could use a mandolin, but I chose just to use an ordinary knife. That way it's easy for me to cut off any parts that are not looking so hot. The pieces will be a little irregular, but that's fine. The only little trick is that when you come to the leaves, you just want to remove those little thin stems. We don't want those. We're going to discard those and set the leaves in their own separate pile. So I just pinch it off with my fingernail. You can cut it if you want to. I have a bit to do here. So I have chopped up a portion of some of the celery, and I want you to notice the dehydrator trays have holes in them. So these pieces of celery like this, that piece would probably be okay, but some of the smaller ones are just going to fall right through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the leaves out on the tray, and then I'll show you what I'll do with the actual stalk pieces. The general rule when you're dehydrating is to not have things overlapping each other. But with these leafy things, it's okay to have some overlapping, especially since we are just going to be grinding this up. It doesn't matter if they stick together. We just want them to dry quickly, so that's why we do a single layer. We're just going to lay these out. By the way, the dehydrator I use, you do not have to have something big and fancy and expensive. I know some people who have spent a lot of money on a fancy dehydrator, and I have seen how it works, and truly it's no better than my inexpensive Nesco. This is a Nesco American Harvest, and you can add trays to it, as many as you want. Of course, the more trays you add, the more you have to rotate them, and the longer it will take for the things closer to the bottom to dry. But I have a couple of these because when it is fruit harvest, they are going 24/7. And no, it does not significantly increase my power bill. Now, if you live in an area that's fairly arid, we do not. We live where it's rather moist. You could do a solar dehydrator too. For us, that wouldn't work. Okay, so I've got the leaves laid out. Now, when I'm ready to do the stalks, I'm going to lay another tray on top, and then there's these handy dandy plastic trays that just fit inside. I believe they call these the fruit roll trays, It just prevents any small things from going through the cracks. And that's something I don't know if it comes with one or two of those, but you can buy, again, as many as you need. You can also cut parchment paper to fit, but I am a little hesitant to do that when I have something that's going to need to be dehydrated overnight or where I can't attend to it. I just worry about the potential for a fire. To me, it's not worth it. I'd rather spend a few dollars on these little plastic trays. And again, these do not have to be perfectly spread out. We want a single layer as much as possible. We don't need to obsess, however, about how that works out. So if some are overlapping, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to finish filling that up. I'm going to do all my trays. I'm going to dehydrate it, and then I'll be back to show you what to do once they are fully dried out. Okay, it's the next day. I let my celery and celery leaves dehydrate in the dehydrator, electric dehydrator, for about 5 hours. That was all it took for mine. It doesn't take very long, which is kind of surprising because you would think that, celery is full of water. And for all these trays of celery and celery leaves, what I ended up with was this much celery. So this is one of the reasons we dehydrate. It takes up so much less room than canning or freezing. This will be perfect for putting in soups and stews, especially. You just toss them in. They will rehydrate on their own. And incidentally, I like to use, smells good. I like to repurpose glass jars for dehydrated food, and that's because I just don't like to use up my canning jars for dehydrated fruit if I can help it. Okay, and then I got these for leaves. Today I'm going to make celery salt with the leaves. And the reason I like to make my own is that store-bought, who knows, what was sprayed on the celery, who knows. A lot of times they have sugar or MSG or other sort of dubious ingredients. If I do it myself, not only am I using something from my own garden, but I am ensured that it wasn't sprayed, there's no weird chemicals, it's as healthy as it's going to be. So if you never used celery salt before, it is just a great all-purpose seasoning, and you would use it the way that you would use any salt, except for baking. I don't think you'd want to use it in baking, but it adds a great flourish to meats or soups or stir fries, whatever it is that you're making. So the first step is to take the dried leaves and we're going to turn them into a powder. Now you could do this by hand. I have heard of people just, sort of crackling this up with their fingers. You could use a mortar. You can use a blender, but I happen to have my food processor handy, and so that's what I'm going to use today. I'm just going to put this whole jar in. You can do as much or as little as you desire. If you've never done celery salt before, start with a small amount. Make sure you like it. I'm just going to pulse it until it's a powder. We're almost done. We're just going to combine the salt with the celery powder. You can use any kind of salt you like, but I do recommend sea salt. Table salt or iodized salt kind of lends a funky flavor to it. You may use either a fine salt or a coarse. I happen to just have some coarse on hand, so that's what I'm going to use. And it's a matter of personal preference as to how much salt and how much celery powder you want to put in things. Some people like to do half and half, some people like 1 part to 2 parts. You just need to experiment a little bit and see what you like. I'm going to keep it simple and just do half and half. So I've got a tablespoon and I'm going to measure out a tablespoon of salt. And of course, if you want to do bigger quantities, you can. You can use whatever measurement you like, 1/4 of a cup, whatever. Then I'm going to do a tablespoon of the celery powder. And, don't be too worried if you spill a little. It doesn't have to be real exact. And then I just stir it together. And I'll take this and I'll pour it into a jar. Sometimes I use an Old Spice jar, but usually I'll use a glass jar with a well-fitting lid because it just keeps fresher that way. You could use, for example, a jelly jar is one of my favorite ways to do it. And that's it. And it adds a lot of nice celery flavor as well as the salt flavor to your food. I hope you enjoy it.